Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. My name is Carrie Young, and I am San Francisco Heritage's Communications and Programs Manager. And welcome to Rooted in Resilience, Legacy Restaurants and Bars in San Francisco. This is our first lecture series event of 2020, and our all virtual series will continue each month until November. And it's a great lineup, all focused on women and preservation to celebrate the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. So now, as a preservation organization, Heritage's mission has grown over its almost 50-year history to encompass the protection of intangible heritage, the places like historic bars, restaurants, and other businesses that hold significant cultural value and traditions here in San Francisco. And supporting and protecting these legacy businesses is one of the most important preservation issues right now. And we're happy to spotlight a few of SF's women-owned legacy businesses tonight and seeing how they are managing during the pandemic. And so to lead our conversation, we're excited to have Denise Clifton with us, the author of the book, Tables from the Rubble, which explores the role of San Francisco restaurants in the recovery after the 1906 earthquake. Denise has been a wonderful partner to Heritage over the last 5 or 6 years. She's the founder of Tandem Vines Media, where she develops strategic storytelling for companies like Alaska Airlines. And her journalism career has included writing for Mother Jones and leading award-winning visual storytelling for the Seattle Times. And so Denise is currently working with the nonprofit Project Feast on a culinary heritage project, collecting the recipes and stories of refugee and immigrant cooks in the Seattle area. And so tonight, Denise will highlight stories of legacy businesses from Tables from the Rubble, and will then moderate a Q&A with our special guests, Julie Howe from Samoa Restaurant in Chinatown, and Maralisa Simmons-Cook of Specs 12 Adler Museum Cafe in North Beach. Both Specs and Samoa were selected as original members of Heritage's Legacy Restaurants and Bars program that launched back in 2013, which was an important precursor to the Legacy Business Registry program that we have here now in San Francisco, and which Denise was an early influence on as well. And so before I hand it off to Denise, please note the Q&A feature in your Zoom menu bar if you're joining us there, which you can use to submit questions throughout the program. And those joining us on Facebook Live can also type out their questions there, and we'll select a few at the end to answer. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Denise.
Carrie, thank you so much. And thanks to everybody who's joining us today in this first event in San Francisco Heritage's series honoring women in preservation. And really, it's an honor to be talking about San Francisco's historic bars and restaurants and their legacy of resilience that has seen them through past disasters like the 1906 earthquake and continues to inspire us today. And I'm so glad that Julie Howe of Samoa and Maralisa Simmons-Cook of Specs Bar are here to join us, because they are two extraordinary women behind historic bars and restaurants. And they will be talking about how their businesses are navigating the current crisis of the coronavirus pandemic. And it's a crisis that has laws and rules for bars and restaurants changing by the day. And currently indoor dining for restaurants is closed and all operations for bars are closed in San Francisco. So we'll be talking about how their businesses are working through this time period. So, you know, San Francisco, this is a city that has seen booms and busts from the very beginning, from the time that it took the name of San Francisco in 1847, found itself the launching point for the gold rush a year later, and 3 years after that was destroyed by fire. In its lifetime, San Francisco has rebuilt time and again from epic natural disasters that have reshaped the landscape, the economy, and everyday life. But probably one of the most formative of those disasters was the 1906 earthquake, which left 5 square miles of the city in ruins. About 400,000 people lived in the city at the time of the quake, and after the fires swept through after the earthquake, more than half of those people had lost their homes. They lived in the streets, they lived in the parks like the Presidio, like Golden Gate Park, Washington Square, and they cooked in makeshift kitchens that were cobbled together from the rubble of their own homes. And food distribution was a huge challenge for the city at the time. And the head of the Red Cross relief effort, Dr. Levine, within a couple of weeks after the earthquake, was writing to the city to urge that restaurants be allowed to reopen so they could be selling meals at a cost of no more than 15 cents. The city had supplies, but they needed the restaurants as a network to get the food out to the people. So restaurants sprang up very, very quickly. There are dozens and dozens of photographs like this showing restaurants operating in tents or in shacks with handwritten signs advertising food and drinks for 5 or 10 or 15 cents. And as the city rebuilt, these shack restaurants would persist for a couple of years. And some of them would go on to become brick and mortar restaurants and lead the economic recovery in their neighborhoods. So for example, on this street, this is Ellis Street, just off of Union Square downtown, John's Grill would open in 1908 and was said to be the first new brick and mortar restaurant downtown after the earthquake. John's Grill would go on to become famous as the hangout for Dashiell Hammett, who wrote The Maltese Falcon. And over the years, these legacy restaurants and bars have persisted through the flu epidemic of 1918, through 2 world wars, through another devastating earthquake in 1989. And now they're facing a new crisis in the coronavirus pandemic. This is a very different kind of crisis. It looks very different. The buildings are all standing. And instead of crowds coming together in the street to help the city rebuild, we have to stay separate to stay safe. But the economic hardship is real. And for example, John's Grill has been closed since the shelter-in-place order took effect in March. And the owners currently have a GoFundMe campaign set up to help support employees. So for my book, it was inspiring to spend time with some of the owners of legacy bars and restaurants that came out of the time period after the earthquake. And this seemed like a good time to check in with them, revisit some of their stories, and see how they are doing to navigate the crisis of today. So for example, Swan Oyster Depot opened on Polk Street in 1912, and it was first owned by the Louston family, who had been part of the food and relief effort after the earthquake. They had distributed flour and water to people living in Golden Gate Park. And the Louston family owned Swan Oyster Depot until 1946, when they sold it to Sal Sancimino. And the Sancimino family still owns Swan today. Sancimino brothers and cousins can still be found cracking crab and cracking jokes behind the counter. And of course, that counter has been closed since shelter-in-place took effect in March. But for Swan, takeout and delivery services were part of their business model from the very beginning. And so those business strategies have helped sustain them. They've had to curtail their hours a little bit, but they have been open for takeout and delivery throughout. And they miss people coming to the counter. They miss that energy and the joshing back and forth. But they are glad to have been rooted in some additional business strategies. And they say that they will be able to be ready to open in a heartbeat when it's safe to do so. In North Beach, Liguria Bakery opened in 1911. It was opened by a man named Ambrosio Sirocco. And he came from Genoa after the earthquake. And his grandson, Michael, continues to run the bakery today using the original family recipe to bake the focaccia. And Liguria has stayed open. The crowds in line have diminished and the business to restaurants has diminished. But one bright spot is that for the first time, Liguria Bakery is selling dough. So customers can stop by and pick up dough to take home and bake the bread at home. And that's the first time they've done that. And that's been one bright spot in their business in a very hard time. San Francisco's Chinatown is, whoops, looks like I've got a little bit of a glitch here in my slides. Okay, San Francisco's Chinatown is the oldest and largest in the US. And after the earthquake, it was completely devastated. Chinatown's business leaders had to fight for the right to rebuild in their historic location. And when they did, they rebuilt very quickly. Sam Wo restaurant opened in this time period on Washington Street. in a sliver of a building, and was able to be known from the very beginning for its hearty, cheap food like jus. And sorry, I'm just checking to see why my slides, there we go. It's been known from the very beginning for hearty, cheap food like jus, for its late night hours, and in the 1960s and 70s for having the world's rudest waiter, Edsel Ford Fong. And that he was deemed that by Chronicle columnist Herb Caen. Lots of great stories about Edsel. And the Howe family has been a part of the ownership of the restaurant since the 1960s, so since the days of Edsel. And in 2012, the family and the restaurant faced a huge challenge when the city determined that the building needed to be shut down. It was in need of some major repairs, and the community really turned out in support of the restaurant. And they that energy from the community, that support, gave the family the strength and the inspiration to find a way to reopen, which they did 3.5 years later on Clay Street. And they have been open for takeout and delivery through the pandemic time period. This is David Howe, who is part of the primary ownership of the restaurant, and he also does the majority of the cooking. And his daughter, Julie, is going to be joining us. And Julie is also a nurse, and we're glad that she's able to take time to join us to talk about how Samwo is doing during this time. And in North Beach, we have Specs 12 Adler Museum Cafe. Specs is in a building that was constructed in 1911, so part of the rebuilding of North Beach after the earthquake. And during Prohibition, it held a speakeasy. And during the 1950s, it was a pioneering lesbian bar owned by the first known out lesbian bar owner in San Francisco, Tammy Basu. And in 1968, Richard Specs Simmons opened his bar in this space, and it quickly became a draw for artists and poets and musicians and writers, and the walls are famously covered by memorabilia and artifacts that have been given by affectionate patrons from over the years. And Specs is now owned by Richard Specs Simmons' daughter, Ellie, who is also a painter. And it's owned by Maralisa Simmons-Cook, who is also a musician, and her band is Space Captain, and their latest video was partially filmed at Specs, which is really cool. You should check it out. And this has been a super challenging time for Specs, and as for all bars during this time period. And we are glad that Maralisa is able to join us to talk about their strategies and what they see going forward. So these are two celebrated legacy businesses in San Francisco, Samwo and Specs. And please join me in welcoming Julie Howe of Samwo Restaurant and Maralisa Simmons-Cook of Specs 12 Adler Museum Cafe. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So you both grew up in these businesses. They've been a part of your families your whole life. So Maralisa, let's start with you. What was it like to grow up with your grandfather owning this legendary bar in North Beach?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty trippy. I grew up in West Marin, out in the woods in Lagunitas. And so Specs and just San Francisco in general, like really from the very beginning, birth, I would say, it became sort of this alter ego for me, where my mom would take me in on the weekends and some days after school. I was there when I was a little baby, and the community there, some of the same people that are still there drinking at the bar, kind of helped raise me and helped teach me about art and culture and music and all of these things. So Specs for me as a grandfather was always sort of this kind of just godlike figure. And it was kind of a funny disconnect thinking about him as the traditional, you know, warm, fuzzy grandpa. I'm gonna, come sit on my lap and I'll read you a story. Because my experiences growing up there were, we would all go out to dinner in Chinatown at Sam Woe or another, like a steakhouse, and then we'd get to the bar and he's like, sit down and shut up. And so it took me a while until I was kind of in my teens to realize how unique my situation was, but also how special it was, and how much access I had to just the arts and culture, having this like window into San Francisco from a young age.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And Julie, I know you started actually working in the restaurant at a very young age at Sam Woe. How did that happen, and what was that like?
Well, it happened when I was 9, summertime. It was just, I was hanging out in the living room. My dad was on his way to work and he looked at me sitting there. He said, what are you doing tonight? I'm like, I don't know, Dad, I'm kind of bored. He said, oh, you're bored. All right, great. You can come down and help me at the restaurant. And I was like, okay. So I went, and that was how everything kind of started. And the earliest memories I have of the restaurant was just loud buzzers, the dumbwaiter, the name Esso Ford Fung, and just like a lot of chopping action.
Yeah. Well, and there were a lot, I know old timers love to tell stories about Edsel Ford Fung. Are there any stories that that you remember that you've been told over the years that you'd want to share?
There were so many stories. One of my favorites were just the general Edsel thing, where he will order customers around and just call them names like, hey, ugly, go, take care of this beautiful girl on this other table. She wants a soda, and we didn't have sodas back in the day at the restaurant. So he'll like throw the customer like a couple bucks and like, go across the street and get this fine lady a can of soda. And then, people would just like, they would just like obey him and go. And it was, kind of crazy to hear those stories. And it was just time and time again. Initially I thought they were all kind of like a joke. Until, you hear so many stories and they're kind of like the recurrent thing. Then you're like, oh man, this person really did what, everyone said he did. And it's just, I can't imagine how it would have been if I had met him in person, even as a little girl. I think he passed away when I was 2. So it definitely would have been different for me, I think, at the restaurant if I had met him in real life.
I think he was really a character from another time, for sure. So, and going back to Specs, Maralisa, I know one of the things that people love about Specs is all the memorabilia on the walls. And I'm wondering if there is something on the walls that you have a story behind that is something special to you.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that struck me, that stood out to me the most when I was young was this newspaper clipping right next to the fridge behind the bar. And it was a story of my grandpa and a couple of friends right around a couple years within opening in like the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. And it was the story of a crazy night that they had. After a long day of drinking at the bar, Specs met up with a couple friends, a couple bartender friends in the neighborhood. And they decided to sail on a tiny little boat down to LA. And they didn't really have anything with them except a bottle of Gordon's gin, which was his like signature drink of choice, and a flashlight, I believe. And so shortly after they started sailing, they were still in the bay. They popped a hole, the boat popped a hole, and they started sinking. And I guess what happened is a friend of my grandpa's was holding the flashlight above his head in the water. It was like pitch black, and they were drinking the gin to try to stay warm and like survive in the freezing cold water. And eventually, after a couple of hours, a big like cruise ship came, and it was the flashlight that that they were able to spot, and they saved them. So the newspaper clipping is a picture of my grandpa and these 4 friends on a couch, like huddled in some towels. And it was taken at my mom's childhood home. So I guess she woke up in the next morning to go to school, and there was a newspaper, there was a news reporter there, and her dad and all of these people sitting on the couch. And that must have been just an insane moment. And I don't know what newspaper it was that it's from. I'm assuming it was the Chronicle, but maybe another one. But that's like the most iconic piece to me in the bar. It's a great story.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing that they survived that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you and your mom are among a very small group of women who own bars in San Francisco. And here you have this legacy bar. What is that like, owning a legacy bar in San Francisco right now?
Yeah, I mean, it just in general, regardless of the pandemic, it feels pretty crazy to me because I'm in my 20s. Like you were saying before, I'm a musician, and my mom, who grew up in the bar, is an artist as well. She's a painter. So I just think, I definitely don't take it for granted, but when I step back and look at the fact that we have this mother-daughter business going, and we're both able to be artists, but also simultaneously keep this historic place afloat, it's really special. And I think like even through, all the financial hardships that we've been going through the past 4 months, it sort of feels like, it's out of our, like, we don't have a choice except to, persevere and make sure it survives, because it's sort of like, it feels like we're both responsible for upholding this legacy for the community and everything. So yeah, I mean, especially during COVID, it's been crazy. And just to see the response online from the community is amazing. I mean, I just started doing sort of social media for the bar last May or so. And so there had never been any social media for the bar. So to hop online all of a sudden and realize there's people all over the world that have stories and grew up going there and everything is super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And Julie, I mean, you kind of had this experience earlier when Sam Low had to close for a few years and felt that outpouring from the community. And what did you, having a business that's so beloved by the community, what kind of responsibilities did you sort of realize with that?
Well, what my dad and I kind of picked up was we kind of have to give back to the community, especially the last couple of days where we had that extreme outpour of people just coming in to get the last meal at the restaurant. It really touched my dad. He's a very stoic man. I've never seen him, too emotional, but having the amount of customers that came to us that night, those couple of nights, it really did change him, because I think he was tired. He was okay, maybe we should just let go, but after those 2 nights, he was just like, no, I need to find a way and fight back and to provide for the community that showed us so much love. And then it was pretty amazing because during those last 2 nights we hear really like wonderful, beautiful stories, of people and how they're connected to the restaurants, how, they have their memories there and what the restaurant meant to them. I think that also blew my mind too. I knew we were, like a little quirky spot, but I didn't know it meant so much to people. So with that, we just decided, we had to make sure that we carried on, and that it had to be in Chinatown, so it kept kind of like the history going.
Right. I know that was really important. And thinking about Chinatown now, in this latest crisis, Chinatown actually started feeling the effects of the pandemic crisis earlier and harder than some of the other neighborhoods. And what was that like for Sam Low?
That was like another blow. We were really unsure what was going to happen next. And we were kind of getting prepared to, maybe it's, the end of our line, maybe that's it. We had done our fair, of fighting, and maybe now it's time, like we can't survive or keep up anymore. So it was a time of a lot of uncertainty. We weren't sure we were going to be able to carry on, but again, back to the community, they were able to support us, and we're still here doing takeout and whatnot now.
Right. And have you had to do anything a little bit different with the menu or with your hours as you've transitioned to being just takeout and delivery?
Oh, so much has changed, because Stanwell is known for a late night eatery, but with the whole shelter in place, there's no bars, there's no late night atmosphere, there's none of that. So we have to change our hours we had to reduce it. So it'll just pretty much be 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. on weekdays, and we close a little earlier on the weekends. And we have to really lay off a lot of our staff, which was hard. And right now we're just running on a skeleton crew. My dad, being the bull that he is running the restaurant, he's running the kitchen, and we're just doing it with the minimal staff, and we're learning as it goes, especially with, the upkeep of, how to keep everyone healthy and safe during the COVID virus right now. So just a lot of learning too.
Right, absolutely. And then for Specs, Maralisa, I mean, Specs, of course, had to close entirely at the start of shelter in place. And you tried takeout for a few weeks, but that didn't work very well. I wonder if you can talk about how some of the things that you've been trying and what's been sustaining you.
Yeah, so March 16th was the day we closed, which I'm sure like most businesses also close that day. And I just realized it's 4 months to the day today.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy. But yeah, immediately when we closed, I mean, we had to furlough our full staff. We had a pretty small staff to begin with, but they've all been there for anywhere from 4 or 5 years to 15 years. So that was really hard. And immediately we have a bookkeeper, and she was kind of like, okay, here's the deal financially, like assuming we reopen May 1st, this is how much we need to get by. So we did a GoFundMe, which is obviously like really difficult to try to promote that and be asking for money when every single small business around you is doing the same. But we were really just overwhelmed with the support in that realm, and also were able to get some press, which helped. And then we were able to try to do a little like to-go shop in early June, and it lasted probably under a month, just because of all of the regulations with ABC and us being a type 48 bar without a kitchen. It was pretty difficult. There was, the option of you can pair up with a meal provider, but then the catering license application to use the outdoor space was closed for San Francisco, so we couldn't do it. So we were just selling bottles and our cheese and crackers, like our classic stuff that we sell, but it was really nice for a while to see the community showing up, and then it just sort of became too hard. So we've had to shut back down. And my thought process with it, especially as it continues to peak in San Francisco these last few weeks, is that at this point, unless we're able to open at our maximum capacity for the pandemic, which is going to be, once bars are able to reopen inside with safe spacing and half capacity, et cetera, financially, it doesn't make sense to put everybody back on payroll. Because we are a union bar. Most of our employees are in the union. So we have those fees, and we have like pretty good wages. And so it sort of wasn't weighing out with the to-go shop. But I'm hoping August 13th, we'll see if it gets pushed back. I'm a little bit nervous, but we're feeling okay about it.
I know those rules and times are changing constantly. And when you think about a reopening date, are there things that you imagine that Specs will be doing a little bit differently?
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I think just every business, especially on the inside, is going to look so different. I mean, I'm preparing to sort of have the table spacing, possibly a plexiglass thing up around the bar, which is just like, you know, feels so futuristic for what Specs is. And I think, I mean, I do think as much as it will change and feel weird for a while, like a half a year or a year, um, all we really want is to just be able to open our doors and have people come in again, because I think what is so special about our bar is the interior and the cozy feeling and the history on the walls and stuff. And so I think that's part of the reason we sort of let it go with the delivery of cocktails and all of that. It just didn't feel like a very Specs thing to do. And so I'm hoping, as soon as people are allowed to come back in, we'll see our regulars again, and we'll see hopefully some tourism, who knows. But it'll at least we'll be able to be there for people.
Right, right. I know community support is super important for both of your businesses. And I wonder if each of you, Julie, maybe you can start, if there are things that you're hearing from the community right now that is helping you get through this challenging time.
Oh yeah, definitely. There have been a few nonprofit organizations through the community that has reached out to us. Like their food, like they're connected to the food bank. They think one of them was CCDC. They do the feed and fuel meal program where there's a lot of single occupancy rooms in Chinatown where people don't have their own private kitchen, where they have to share kitchen spaces. So CCDC has like these vouchers for these group of residents where they can come to the restaurants to claim their meals and stuff. And in return, CCDC will have us like check for the meals that were claimed. And we had a similar program with another nonprofit. I think they were called a Food Relief initially, and now they changed it to Help Kitchen. And also, it's just like an ongoing thing where they're connected with the food bank, and people who need to have food, they'll come to the restaurant and we'll make meals and stuff to just kind of get them back on track, so it's just these things, and just like listening to what the communities have to say, like our customers telling us, how we can kind of cook for them and whatnot, during this time. It still kind of helps.
Right, right. And Maralisa, what are there things that you're hearing from the community or stories that people are sharing that are helping you during this time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for everybody, the donations, obviously, like reading the comments on GoFundMe has been really just eye-opening for me, and seeing all of the personal stories and memories that people are sharing on there really like opened up my eyes to a way bigger community of Specs lovers than I knew existed. But I also think like, pretty much everybody that's in North Beach that was able to come to the to-go shop showed up and bought a 4-pack of scrimshaw or whatever. And so that was really sweet. But I think people are just, in general, it's just like, over social media and everything, people are rooting for us and want to just be there when we reopen. I think that's the toughest thing, is that we're in this spot where we really just need to wait it out until we're able to open our doors. And then I hope that, and I know that the community will be there for us when the time comes.
Right, right. And in the meantime, one thing that the community could do if they were inspired to would be to buy gift cards that they could use then to drink at Specs. Isn't that right?
Yeah. So we started selling e-gift cards. I mean, again, all of these things are so the antithesis of Specs, but I'm like, I guess it's 2020 and there's a pandemic, so we have to do it. But we have these gift cards that will be redeemable once we reopen, and they're for any amount. So a lot of people I've been seeing that they've been gifting them to others, which has been really sweet to see. And we did have some merchandise, like some limited edition merchandise, which sold out, but we do still have some face masks. So we are doing shipping for people interested. But yeah, it's all at specsbarsf.com. It's all of our information.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know in a minute we're going to get to some questions, I think, from the audience, but I wanted to ask each of you before we do that, is there anything that you need when you think about what the community could be doing to support you and other businesses like Specs and Sam Lowe? What do you think you could use from the community right now?
Oh, for me, sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just like I was saying, like if you're unable to donate, sharing the fundraiser is obviously always helpful, but also just sharing memories. I mean, when we had our 52nd anniversary party on April 26th, we were already shuttered, so we spent the whole day sharing just people's memories of the bar, and I love seeing those and all of the personal pictures and stuff. So I guess just like keeping up the momentum and helping us feel like we're gonna make it. It really is just support and love is all we need. So like I was saying, in about a month, I'm hoping that we're able to reopen. So it feels like kind of the last stretch right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And Julie, how about for Sam Lowe? Are there things that the community can be doing to support Sam Lowe and other restaurants like Sam Lowe to get through this time?
Just continue ordering from us, continue to come back. We too have gift cards, A new thing we are working right now between myself and my partner, Jane, we are trying to rebuild our website, the Sam Lowe website. So then, to have updates and have, like to sell merchandise in a better, more efficient way. And, if we have specials at the restaurant, we're going to keep that posted. Just tapping into the social media aspect of it. Yeah, and then just definitely stop by Sam Lowe's for takeout. Give us a call, or just go order us through the apps. We have a whole bunch of apps that we are currently using for delivery. And so, yeah. And I guess last thing is just if you have any comments or anything, just email me personally and just, share what we at the restaurant can do for you guys, and then we'll see we can accommodate that.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, just feel really rooted in the community for both of you. I mean, that's, I know, really important. So, and so thinking of the community, Carrie, I was wondering, do we have questions from the audience for Julie or for Maralisa?
We do. We have a couple of questions. The first one is from Steve Crespel. It's for Maralisa. He said, I love that Specs is a union bar. I'm a big supporter of Unite here local too. There are very few standalone union bars. It's pretty unusual. So how did Specs become a union bar?
That is an awesome question. I don't know the actual origin of when exactly it started, if it was right when he opened or a bit later on, but I do know that Specs was born and raised in Roxbury, Boston, and he was a sheet metal worker before he was a bar owner, and he was always really working class and sort of involved in various unions around Boston. So I can only imagine that was really important to him when starting. And I think my introduction to the union was really hearing about it at Specs. I didn't know what it was when I was a kid. So it is super cool that we're, one of the last union bars in the city. That's something that's difficult for us sometimes to uphold, just with fees and everything. Like it does make it more expensive, but it was super important to my grandpa. And I think that it's something we'd like to continue as long as we can.
Yeah, thank you. And For Julie, Howard Wong asks, what's the origin of Samlo's famous noodle rolls, barbecue pork noodle, rice noodle rolls? Like, how far back in history does that go?
My goodness. I just know that back in the day, the noodle roll, I think it was a bit different. Maybe I want to say probably 60 years ago. It was sold per row, 25 cents each roll. And they would only make X amount of rolls a day. And once they are done with those rolls, that's it. And I don't really know how it came about. And I could only imagine it's because we had a rice steamer downstairs in the basement that we acquired from another restaurant or a noodle factory. And I think we started incorporating that into the dishes at the restaurant. And then where we would actually steam our own rice noodles. And then probably with the equipment they had, they just threw things together, which is pretty much like a Samwo type of thing to do. You know, whatever the customers ask or you think the customer would like, you just kind of like throw things in together and just make it. Even could be a hit or miss. I know it had evolved from the time it was first made. It used to have bean sprouts with the barbecue pork, and now we don't do the bean sprouts, and we just do what we feel is standard now is the barbecue pork, the eggs, and the cilantro. Yes,
and it's delicious. Having had it before,
yeah,
and dipping it in the mustard.
Sure.
That's really good. For Maralisa, it sounds like it's your cousin Robin. How are you managing with the zigzag regulations on partial opening? What do you think of the way that the mayor is handling the rest of the bar industry and specs? Just kind of the ins and outs of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a complicated situation, and I really have gone back and forth about, do we need to, what is the importance of pairing with a meal provider versus just booze? And I do think that, I do see the legitimacy in type 48 bars, just like strictly alcohol, being sort of lower on the totem pole of opening, because I think when you have a lot of liquor and someone, the boundaries of social distancing do get a little bit blurry, which I have seen for sure firsthand. And so, I think that San Francisco is trying to be as safe as possible. And I think ultimately, it's this balance between, I really do think we need to preserve these institutions, but also we need to be as safe as possible. And so if there are other means of these places surviving or just hibernating for a couple of months, then yeah, that's what needs to happen. So it has been frustrating for sure, but I understand, and I want the city to stay as safe as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for the both of you, it's a great question from Michelle Mirth. She asks, on the other side of COVID, when we emerge on the other side of this, with the changes that might entail, or that will entail really, what will be the core things about both of your businesses that will always still be there? What do you think? For Julie, what do you, you can go first.
I hope we can keep the quirkiness of the restaurant, like the whole no BS attitude when we come to taking your order and stuff. That's still something I try to instill in the staff. That's one thing. And definitely, just still try to listen to what the customers have to tell us about the food and try to adjust it in that way. Just, staying funky, I guess, is one way to put it. Yeah. We'll still keep that. I don't think that's going to go away.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Maralisa?
Yeah, kind of the same, honestly. Specs has always been, all of the bartenders there have always been so incredible and have always had like the best one-liners and been able to, crack anybody up that comes to the bar. And so I think that I mean, our staff has been really dedicated, and I'm confident about sort of keeping everybody on, and also just in terms of the walls and how everything looks. That was always a huge thing for Specs, was like, nothing changes. The light bulb doesn't change. Nothing's added to the wall. Nothing's taken off. There's a tiny thing here and there, but the quirkiness will stay forever. And I think that the general feeling of the bar and its ideals and its attitude, and being a place for artists and weirdos and all of that will stay the same. So, just because you put a plastic barrier up and take a couple tables out doesn't mean that people aren't going to still be talking their crazy shit. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. And so just for our last question, also a great question from Gail Gilman. She asks, Samwo and Specs, they're so connected. I would drink at Specs and then I would go to Samwo around 2 a.m. Is there a way for you to team up or do something together as women entrepreneurs, a group gift card or cross promotions, things like that?
Funny Gail should ask that question, because I was thinking after our series here, or like our talk here, that I was going to reach out to Maralisa or Ellie, just to see if there's any way we can pair up, and see how Samwo and Specs can come together and just do something, like just to anything, to get revenue up, especially for Specs, because you guys are closed right now. But even if you guys can manage some kind of revenue behind closed doors, I think that would be awesome if we can help in any way.
Thank you. I would love that. I think that it's been, with all of the changes with the ABC and everything, and then the to-go shop not really working out, it's been sort of discouraging for sure. And so we've very much been focused on what's the bare minimum we need to do to survive. But I think especially as soon as we're able to reopen, things are going to change. Things are going to be different for so long. And so I would love to experiment with these other ways of doing business and collaborating. I think that the legacy businesses in Chinatown and North Beach especially are so interconnected. And like I said, I grew up going to Samwo, so that would be awesome. Let's do it.
Nice. Okay, well, we have time for one more question for Denise. So from Steve again, he said, I just got your book today and I'm really loving it. So are you working on a new book now? Can you tell us?
That's always a good question. I have so many stories that so many threads of stories that I'm pursuing, and I would say none of them is quite into a book form yet to talk about, but there's always something that I'm working on. And in the meantime, staying connected to, these stories and threads that I've loved in the past, and the stories of Samwo and Specs are super close to my heart. But thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks so much. And in fact, for people who are interested, both Samwo and Specs are places that you can get my book. So that's another way to support them, I hope.
Great. Okay, I think we're gonna close it out a little early, and that was a great conversation. Thank you so much, Denise and Julie and Maralisa. I really appreciate your time tonight. And so for everyone watching, if you can, please support these awesome women-owned legacy businesses. As they said, purchase Denise's wonderful book, and we will send around all of these links to everyone who registered, and we'll also make a post on our website as some follow-up information. And also, if you're interested in learning more about Heritage's advocacy work on behalf of legacy businesses and to view our upcoming lectures, you can also visit our website at sfheritage.org. And next month, we have a really great program. We'll be in conversation with Mary Radcliffe, co-owner and editor of the San Francisco Bayview National Black newspaper. And finally, we'll have just a 4-question survey to send out to everyone who registered. So please help fill it out if you can to help us improve these programs. But I want to say thank you again to Denise and Julie and Maralisa. And
many thanks to all of you.
Say anything?
Thank you guys so much. This was awesome. Really cool.
Yeah. And we'll put up the recording on YouTube after in a day or two. So keep a lookout for that. And
thanks everybody. Yeah. And support.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, support your legacy businesses.
Support your legacy businesses.
Stay safe. Wear your mask.
Yes.
Wear your masks.
Wear your mask. Yes. Thank you.